Welcome to Simply Walk the Talk. Our bodies and minds adapt to what we do most of the time. If you want to change your body and mind, you must change what it is you do most of the time. This podcast explores all things health, wellness, fitness, lifestyle, and biohacking. Stay tuned as we explore various thoughts, methods, and experiences from a multitude of conversations between our interesting guests and experts through many fields of work. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the show.
Simply walk the talk. Simply walk the talk.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Simply Walk the Talk. I am your host, JoshuaJHolland, and today I have a fun, exciting show with a guest I think that is going to rock your world. He's got a really cool story, and I think hopefully we have enough time to dive into all of that. But we have on the show today Mr. Shaun Lake, and Shaun is the co-founder of BUBS Naturals. Shaun is a former professional snowboarder who went on to join Burton Snowboards, work as Shaun White's team manager, and land a spot as the director of sports marketing at DC Shoes. After decades in action sports marketing, Shaun co-founded BUBS Naturals, a line of collagen, peptides, and other all-natural supplements named after his childhood best friend, Glen Doherty, a Navy SEAL who was killed in Benghazi on 9/11 in 2012. He's a devoted husband, father, and fitness fanatic. Shaun is passionate about helping people feel great and do good while leading a business that gives back to the community. Mr. Shaun Lake, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me, Joshua. I appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. This has been interesting. Of course, I think just even getting started with this show today, we had some a bit of a mishap on my end, which is probably what caused us to start a little bit later than anticipated. But as I'm sure you are very good at, being able to go with the punches and go with the flow is something that we're all about. And I just think that we should dive into your story about how you got into what you're doing. I think we're also, as we talked before pre-recording here, we talked about you're big into SEAL Fit, you're big into biohacking, you're big into all kinds of things. So I think we're going to talk a lot about action and adventure and things like that. But let's start with your background. How did you get into what you're doing?
Yeah, well, I mean, I'll go way back, just to kind of set the stage a little bit. So I was raised just outside of Boston, Massachusetts. So I was actually raised in a little fishing town called Gloucester, and I spent my formative years, middle school, high school, in a little town called Winchester. That's where I met my childhood best friend, Glen Doherty, who kind of gets woven into my life repeatedly, decade after decade. And I was that guy who wanted to do things a little bit differently. So, I dropped out of college to pursue a dream of becoming a professional snowboarder, which this was in like 1991. This is like a very unconventional career path back then. And I just had this this thirst for adventure that, I was sitting in college. I wasn't applying myself. My parents knew it. I knew it. And, I was like, I'm going to go and chase this dream and see what happens. And, to a degree, they were also like, well, you're wasting our money and time doing this. So let's go see if you can go hack it on your own. And, fast forward a couple of years and spending some time in the mountains, and I got really lucky. I got some light endorsements for snowboarding, and that just I got a taste of this lifestyle that was, if you work hard at it, if you snowboard hard and you apply yourself and you're passionate about something, you can get some results from it. And so I just immersed myself in that world. My best buddy, Glen, did the same thing for skiing. So we were both out in Utah at a resort called Snowbird. And, fast forward 4 years and I'm getting paid to snowboard. Like I'm traveling the world, and I mean, I'm not getting paid much. Let's be clear. Like there's Shaun White level salaries and Travis Rice. And then there's like the rest of us that were like, hey, I'm making like $1,000 a month. I'm rich. But it was great because like, you know, you bang nails in the summer, you wait tables, and you get to live this dream lifestyle of living in a mountain town and riding powder, scaring the God out of yourself on a giant mountain and really seeing what you're made of. And there was something in that was magical during that time. My best buddy, Glen, was trying to do the same thing for skiing, didn't make it as a pro skier, and ended up deciding that his next challenge, his next way of challenging himself was by joining the Navy and declaring that he was going to become a Navy SEAL. And this is in the 90s. Remember, at this point, it's like 1994, 95. There was no internet to tell us what to expect. Like, no one knew what BUDS was. No one knew what any of that stuff was. It was some mystery that he was going to go figure out.
For those,
and there's something really cool.
For those who don't know, what is BUDS?
So I believe it stands for Basic Underwater Demolition. And by the way, I never joined the Navy. I was never in that. I'm just friends with a whole bunch of guys that do really badass stuff. So I'll never pretend to know what all those acronyms are. In fact, one of my biggest jokes with all the SEALs that I'm friends with, they all speak in these acronyms. And I'm like, what does this stuff even stand for? Anyway, so Glen said, hey, I'm going to join the Navy. I'm going to become a Navy SEAL. So he takes off and he goes down that path. Mm-hmm. And it's something to know about Glen, and this is important because it ties back later, is we all have those friends that are really like determined and like they set out to do something and they just do it. Glen was that kind of person. He also made it look effortless. Now, he put in a ton of effort and work, but he just didn't make it look hard, which is also really frustrating for the rest of us because we all feel like we're putting out incredibly hard, and Glen just always seemed like he just navigated everything really smoothly. But he decided he was going to join the Navy. He wanted to see what he could do, and next thing you know, a year later, I'm going to his BUDS graduation, and you know what an epic! A bunch of like ski bum guys with long shaggy hair showing up in Coronado to watch their best buddy graduate and get pinned and earn his trident and all that stuff that we didn't know hardly anything about. It was a really neat thing to be around. Now, at the time, I was a professional snowboarder and I was getting paid, and I was also figuring out what was next. So, at 25, I think it's a great inflection point of what road are you on? Is it the right road? How long can you stay on that road? And what's further down it? I knew I couldn't snowboard forever, just like Glen knew he couldn't ski forever. And we kind of saw what the old ski bums looked like, and it wasn't pretty. So we're like, what should we do after this? And so for Glen, it was, hey, I'm going to join the Navy. For me, I decided I was going to knock out my college degree. I was like, hey, I'm getting paid. Like, let's go. Mm-hmm. So my next adventure was going to be finish school, snowboarding paid for school, which is amazing. And then, go join the professional workforce and figure it out. So at age 30, when all of my friends had been graduated for practically a decade and had real jobs and families and wives, I was like, I just got my degree. What am I going to do now? And anyways, I'll fast forward. I end up getting recruited by Burton Snowboards to move to the West Coast to San Diego, where a ton of the snowboarding industry is actually based. And they wanted me to move from the mountains down to the coast, live by the ocean, and work with Shaun White and a handful of other members of the Burton Snowboards team. They all lived in Encinitas, Carlsbad, concentrated in the Southern California area, which I thought was fascinating. I'm like, professional snowboarders live by the beach?
Right.
Wait a minute. And then I realized, well, of course, we spent all of our careers in the mountains cold, and whenever you have the opportunity to go be warm under a palm tree, I guess you're going to take that.
Touché.
So next thing you know, I'm living in San Diego. My best buddy, Glen, is right down the street in Coronado at SEAL Team 3, and I'm working in the action sports industry. I worked for Burton for a little while, ESPN's X Games franchise. Then I worked with Tony Hawk for a little while. And then I spent 6 years at DC Shoes, which is a part of Quicksilver.
And
all the while,
really quickly, sorry to cut you off, but what was the work that you were doing? Like fitness training or teaching them how to, snowboard better? Like, man, what does that look like to work with Shaun White or,
That's actually a great question. So it's funny. With Shaun White, you don't teach Shaun how to snowboard better. No way. When you're a team manager, and that was my first job in snowboarding was as a team manager, your job is to get the athlete from point A to point B. Your job is to make sure that they make all of their travel arrangements, that they make it to the photo shoots, they make it to the film shoots, they make it to practice. They literally get to the right location. After they're on said location, whether it's a half pipe or a slope style course or a photo shoot, you're just kind of turning them loose. Then you're making sure the photographers, the filmers, everyone is doing their part. So you're kind of working around to make sure everyone's capturing the images or are in their best spot. You're also working with the athletes on product development. So Shaun was releasing his first pro model snowboard at the time. He was 16 years old. I mean, this was really young in his career. And so I would work with the snowboard developers, the graphic designers, the artists, and weave in what Shaun wanted to see on a board to make that his finished product. And then there's the magazines and the media and how you can kind of share, these athletes, whoever I was working with, to get better publicity and better coverage, because that, of course, feeds the brand message and get that all out there. So it's one big machine. I mean, it's no different than Nike and basketball. It just was done through the lens of snowboarding. And at the time, it was print magazines and DVD videos. That was how people got their action. And then ESPN and the X Games and like the snowboard contest. Those were like your main outlets for publicity. So you're working with these athletes. You're never teaching them how to snowboard because they know they can ride better than you can ride. But you are there as moral support. You're part psychologist. You're definitely helping them with their headspace. Like, you'll talk about tricks. Like, I'll never forget talking with Shaun at a Vans Cup event or some snowboard contest. And he was like, should I do a front side 5 to a switchback side 5 to this, to this? He just rattles off this run. And I'm like, well, I can talk about it like that, right? I can be like, if you do the following combination of tricks, that'll score really well. And it was never, this is how you should do it. It was just, yeah, that's a great combo, or think about it this way. And then he just goes out and does it. And you're just like,
that's amazing.
Most people have to practice for weeks and months to line up tricks in sequence. And he would just be like, okay, I'll do it that way.
Wow.
So it's neat, but never fitness. Fitness in action sports back then, and really until the last probably, I'd say 7 or 8 years, was kind of a secret. It was a dirty word. No one trained or no one talked about training. This is super, super eye-opening to me. So I remember going to work at DC Shoes in like 2006, and I had just gotten into running and road biking, and no one at that entire office, it was like 100 employees, no one rode a bike unless it was a BMX bike, and no one ran, like no one trained. And then a couple of years later, I got into CrossFit and the whole SEAL Fit scene. And here I am, I'm the marketing director for DC Shoes. I'm working with a ton of these different athletes. The only ones that talked about training were the motocross guys. And for those of you that know, motocross is an incredibly demanding physical sport. You actually have to train to get ready for it. But the snowboarders were like, what? You're like, I don't train, I snowboard. That's my training. It's like, yeah, but if you rode a bike in the off season, if you hit the rowing machine, if you did a little bit more strength training, you could do more. I didn't know any of that when I was riding. I learned that because I was getting older. So when I went to work at DC, I was 32, 33 years old. And, I was almost 40 when I left there. And I was like, oh, I can't snowboard the same way I used to be able to. I better do something about it. And then my best friend, Glen, the Navy SEALs, like, go do 1,000 squats. And, he would give me these training programs, and you figure it out. And what I realized over time was that I can still perform the sports that I love, the things that I love, at a high enough level to really enjoy them the same if I just pay attention to that. And then I started to share it with the athletes. And like, I remember bringing Devin Walsh, a professional snowboarder who's like a legend in snowboarding. I took him to a spin class.
Wow.
He was like dying on a bike, like pouring sweat, dying. And then we would start to go on these video shoots and these photo shoots, and we would do little gym workouts in between, if it was a down day or after riding, we would just do these little programs, and everyone kind of realized they were like unlocking that potential. They're like, oh, if I do a little bit of stuff here, I'll ride better.
Right.
I'll ride longer. Right. And it was cool. It was cool getting exposed to that and learning it myself, and then being able to share that with these athletes. And now, fast forward to 2021, 2022, training is completely commonplace. Like all the main Olympic snowboarders and skiers, everyone has a personal trainer. They've got group sessions they go to. Like it's completely normalized. And it's great because you've seen how the athletics in these sports have just, gone bonkers. And it's, a part of it is, part of it's just straight cojones, but a huge part of it is also the training. Like you're more physically ready to tackle big jumps and all the cool stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. It is very interesting because I know there was, I can't remember exactly when it started trending, but there was this prevalence of talk about training in golf. And I remember, golfers, people like some of my clients would be golfers, and I mean, most of them had big bellies, and it was just kind of like, golf is just, that's kind of part of my workout, but I don't really work out for golf. You're right. And then I think it was like people like Tiger or some that come to mind who.
It was Tiger. Tiger Woods was the famous one. Yeah. He was doing CrossFit SEAL based training. Like there was that whole ESPN documentary around Tiger where he had become close friends with a bunch of people in NSW in they were SEALs, and they were training together. And like you'd look at him on the golf course and he's kind of ripped.
Right. Yeah, he is.
Like he's stacked up. Dude can throw some weight around.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean and that's what's really cool, especially me being a trainer and but also shifting into more of a holistic approach. It's really cool to see because of the awareness shift, like this whole shift in awareness, and in that we all need to be doing something to improve, to optimize our lives. And if we can add that into our careers as well, even if that means our career is sitting at a desk, you can optimize working in an office environment. You can now maximize golfing. You can maximize some of these sports that before was kind of kept a secret. But, there is something to say about sport specific training, right? And because something else that comes to mind are surfers. It seems like surfers back in the day were a lot like snowboarders, how you were saying that they didn't really train because their training was out in the water, right?
That was it. And it's funny. So I did a contract in 2013, 2012. I was working for Reebok, and Reebok had just signed on as the title sponsor of the CrossFit Games.
Wow.
And I was doing a bunch of independent consulting work, and I was bridging this kind of like, I'm immersed in fitness, but I still have a foot in the action sports space. And I'll never forget, Reebok hired me, and they're like, hey, we want you to bridge the gap, like bring training into action sports. And I was like, well, good luck. Like I laid out the landscape. I'm like, these guys, a lot of them don't really train, but let's pick a few and we'll send them some gear and get some feedback. And I sent a box, like a fucking $1,000 worth of shoes and training and all this stuff to Josh Kerr, who at the time, he was on tour. He was one of those top surfers. And I'll never forget, I hit up his agent like a couple months later, and I'm like, hey, so how does Josh like the gear? And the agent was like, he really, really liked everything except for the running shoes. I go, running shoes? I didn't send him running shoes. I sent him weight training shoes, like platform shoes. And he's like, oh yeah, he said they were really stiff and they weren't fun to run in.
That's amazing, because I know exactly what you mean. That's hilarious. Wow. Well,
but that's where they were. Like these guys didn't know that like they saw a platform shoe for weightlifting. They didn't know that elevated heel would have, like, they didn't know what that was for. They thought it was a running shoe.
Wow.
And why wouldn't they? The fact that it was made out of hard plastic maybe would have tipped them off, but that's where the space was back then. Now, I think everyone understands the differences in footwear, and there's so much more that's opened up, around fitness. But back then it was definitely, we were on the front end of that learning curve.
Yeah.
But being a part of that was always really exciting to me, sharing fitness with others. When I was at DC and my local gym, I mentioned earlier, was a gym called SEAL Fit. So it was owned by a former Navy SEAL, Mark Devine, who is a big kind of celebrity style trainer. He's just an awesome human. And he lives in Encinitas, just like the rest of us do. And he had this gym, and I remember when I joined it with Glen, because Glen was a Navy SEAL, so he had to join the gym that was called SEAL Fit. And when Mark asked me to coach, Mark was like, hey, you're a big part of the membership. I really want you to coach. And I had a job. I was the director of marketing at DC Shoes. Like, I didn't need the money. I didn't particularly want to, but Mark's got a very persuasive way about him. And when a giant Navy SEAL says, you need to coach here, I was like, okay, I'll go get my certifications. And I started coaching at the gym, and I'll never forget how satisfying it was, how filling it was to help someone accomplish a goal. And you know this all too well. When you see someone achieve some level of personal accomplishment in the gym, how it translates to the rest of their life is amazing. And
that's why I do what I do.
I got hooked. It's why you do what you do. Exactly.
A lot of people, of course, they see the good sides of it, nowadays with social media and things like that. Sometimes they don't see the downsides, which can be as big or as great. But when you can wake up each day knowing that you have the potential to change someone's life, and I mean, that's working with clients with major diseases and various complications, to just helping them do their first handstand or their first pull up. Like, these things, as you just correctly pointed out, translate into so much more of their life than most of us even realize. But I know this, you know this. So yeah.
It's amazing. So I got kind of hooked on that idea of purpose. Okay. So when I was in snowboarding is inherently, it's a personal sport. You do it for yourself. It's very self-fulfilling. There's not a lot of give back in that model. I discovered give back through CrossFit, that me becoming a trainer in that SEAL Fit gym. That was my first real unlocking of how satisfying it was for me to see someone else level up or accomplish a goal or just make a positive change in their life. And man, it was powerful. So now I'm going to kind of jump around a little bit, but I'm going to fast forward to 9/11 of 2012. So on 9/11, of course, that's the famous 9/11 from in the United States from 2001. But in 2011, we had a second 9/11, and those were the terrorist attacks on Benghazi, Libya. So my best friend, Glen, the Navy SEAL, who I've spent all these adventures with since we were little kids, was working as a private contractor for the Central Intelligence Agency, and he was stationed in Tripoli. So Tripoli in Libya, the capital of Libya, right after the fall of Gaddafi, and he went over there in September of 2011. So he was stationed in Tripoli. So on the morning of 9/11 or the night or whatever, I get this text message from someone saying like, "Hey, there's some weird stuff going down in Benghazi." So I immediately check in with Glen. Now I can only write him an email because he's off in a foreign land. Hey man, I hope you're being safe. Like be cool over there. I hear there's some stuff going down. But I looked it up and I realized, Benghazi's like hours away from Tripoli. He's nowhere near it. And then I wake up the next morning. It's all over the news. Like something's happened in Benghazi, Libya, and some Americans are killed, and we don't really know what. And I'm like, all right, well, it can't have been Glen because, he wasn't there. He was in Tripoli. Fast forward a couple hours, and I get done with the workout, and I get a phone call. And the phone call was normally one I wouldn't answer, but a little voice in my head said, "Answer this call." And I did. And the voice on the other line is like, "Is this Shaun Lake?" And I said, "Yes. I need you to return to your home immediately." And they rattle off my address. And I'm like, "We have some news to share with you." And I just knew. They didn't say who they were, what they were. I just knew.
Wow.
So I drove home. Now, I was the executor of Glen's estate. I was his listed next of kin on his military paperwork. So like we had filled out all these forms together. So like I just knew what that was because I was already in this role of looking after Glen in some way. And I just, my heart just sank, and I pulled up to my house, and there's this black SUV parked in front of my house with a bunch of people in black suits, like just out of the movies. And I walk up, and I'm like, "How bad is it?" And, they shared the news. They just told me, "Hey, 4 Americans were killed over there. Glen was one of the servicemen killed over there." And I didn't know anything yet. I was just like, "Oh," and they're like, "And you're the next of kin. So we're here to tell you, and the news is going to get a hold of this. We're going to have to release the names. This is how this is going to go down." And they basically gamed it out over what the next 48 hours would look like. And then it was like, okay, it's action time. There wasn't a lot of time to grieve. It was, you have to notify his family. You get them to Dover Air Force Base to receive the body, like all the official stuff. It's going to be all over the news. There's going to be a major funeral. And I just kicked into this, this go mode of, okay, what do we do now? And what we do now is we take this larger than life personality, this best friend of mine, but best friend to hundreds of people, and we honor his service. We honor who he was as a national hero, but then we honor him as a best friend. They're two different things, right? Mm-hmm. So there was a very public funeral, TV cameras and the whole 9 yards in Boston where we were raised. And that was an incredibly moving experience on a somewhat of a national stage. There was then what we celebrated for Glen back in San Diego, which was more intimate and celebratory because that's how Glen wanted it. Basically through a 3-day rager.
Wow.
And just partied our faces off to celebrate Glen and all that he stood for. Glen's family and I started a foundation. So I talked about giving back and seeing others accomplish goals. We dove into the nonprofit space knowing nothing about it. Started a scholarship fund for special operators and their family called the Glen Doherty Memorial Foundation. And it was awesome to be a part of launching that and immortalizing Glen's name so that, he would live on, and he would live on in service, helping others. Then, for my part, I was the executor of his estate and stuff. So I had to go to Congress. There was a congressional hearing about Benghazi. We pushed for a congressional gold medal for Glen and the other Americans that were killed in Benghazi. And, there's a lot behind that, but it was a very big shift from action sports buddy to there are things bigger than yourself out there that are worth acting for.
Yeah.
And helping others. I'd gotten a taste of that from fitness. This was a bigger expression of that. And then you could say now the BUBS Naturals brand is a further extension of that, kind of like the biggest megaphone that I could find to help people live their best lives.
And still honor your friend. It's such a beautiful story, and it's so powerful. And, I know it's a while back, but it's still worth mentioning, my condolences to you and to his family. And it's really great to have someone like you that has experienced, because I listened to your story up until this point and how everything that you had done before, I think prepared you to be ready to get into action for everything else. And I'm glad that you did touch on the fact that you didn't really have a moment to grieve in the beginning, but then it sounds like you did take the time to do that, because I know it's important.
Yeah, grief cycles are different for different people. And I watched it with all of these really close friends and family members around Glen, and how different people, the best in people came out during those moments, and the worst. Like I'd love to say that everyone just leveled up and created a positive impact, but there were some people that they were hit hard by the tragedy, and it really drained them, because if Glen, this stud of a human who, could solve all of their problems and was such an anchoring force in their lives, could be taken away, it shook a lot of foundations. And then there were other friends that had that experience happen, that they leveled up. They were like, Glen's gone. Okay, I'm going to be the best version of myself, because that's what Glen would want. And, there were some that just got drunk for a couple months, and, there was all different stuff. For me, there were these actions to take that did delay the grieving process, but it really helped me in the grieving process go that there was loss, but there was also a cause to drive towards, and it was very much in alignment with the values that he had as a person, and then I was able to act on those. And then, they were inside of me, so I was able to act on those. And, I took the time needed, and it was a longer process for sure. It's different for everyone. I've realized there's no timeline. For some people, you can't say, oh, you'll grieve for a month and then you'll be fine. It's no, you might grieve for a week, and then in 6 months, you're going to be crying on the floor because all these emotions that you suppressed are going to come back. Well, the key is to let them happen. Let them happen. You don't have to put them in a box. You don't have to control them. Let them out, because once they're out, they're out. And then you can start to make sense of them and understand them and digest them. And then they'll have a good home, because you'll understand what that is. Like, why are you crying? What's missing inside of you? How can you then take those tears and turn them into something positive, or make sense of something, create an understanding? And all of a sudden you've got a clearer roadmap ahead for whatever you want to do next. And grief it's funny, like it served me well in this case. When my dad died when I was young, I was in my early 20s, and I was the drinker. I got drunk for like 4 months straight. I was a complete puddle. And then I came out of it and kicked myself into gear. Well, the version of me when Glen died, I was in my early 40s, 20 years later. And that version of me I didn't drink on that stuff. I wanted a really clear head. I wanted to take action and be inspired by that and have clear focus. Right. Totally different process. It's different for everyone.
One of the things I think it's important to add on to that is not only is it important to understand that everyone has a different path, I also think it's equally as important to have people around you that also understand that, right? Because sometimes, we're all dealing with our own demons. We're all dealing with our own traumas in our own ways. But sometimes we can't help but to bring that pain onto ourselves, thinking, you see somebody crying on the floor. It's one of the first reactions is, what did I do? And sometimes it's not even about you, right? Sometimes it's just about dealing with it.
Most of the time it's not about you.
Right.
We have this joke in the office about how you interpret things. And the joke is, does the cup have a handle or no handle? Well, when you look at a cup across, of course, you can't see the handle. So you don't know. Right. So don't make an assumption. Does it have a handle? Does it not have a handle?
Right.
Like, so you get caught in these spaces where, oh, that person's crying. What did I do? What did they do? What's going on in their lives? What's going so wrong with them that they're lashing out at you, or they're having that happen? How can you help?
Right.
Or how can you just step aside and let them go do what they got to do? It takes a lot to get there, by the way.
Right. Takes a lot of work.
But a lot of work. But, going through that process, and again, very unlikely set of circumstances, but they happened, has definitely given me a massive appreciation of that idea of service. And I don't just mean service for our country, because very few people actually serve their country, but the idea of service, like you serve. what you do serves, and the idea of helping others, that idea of building community, that idea of helping people achieve their goals it's satisfying, but it also it's got a great purpose, and that's part of the glue that holds us all together. So I'm a big fan of that and that notion, and I certainly, when the whole BUBS Naturals idea, when TJ and I got together to start this company, that was centered. That was like the first thing that made sense to us. It wasn't, collagen's hot, it's going to have a great profit margin. We didn't know any of that crap. We just were like, what can we do to help others? Like, what can we do? What's the glue here?
It's actually a really great analogy, whether intended or not. But the glue, collagen is really good to help the connective tissue, right? So there you go.
Yeah, it actually was totally unintended, but I'm going to use that now.
My pleasure. So speaking of TJ, your co-founder at BUBS, I know you have a pretty interesting story about how you guys met. And maybe we can go there, and then we can actually talk more about the company and what you guys offer.
Yeah. So I was coaching at this gym called SEAL Fit. I worked with a handful of former Navy SEALs, this guy, Chris Smith, Dan Cirillo, known as Taco. These guys are they're just celebrities in the SEAL space. Like they serve their country. They're kick-ass humans, and they know how to get the absolute most out of you. So to be able to be around them and soak up their energy was awesome. And of course, Mark Devine, who put this kick-ass team of people together. Shane Hyatt was another one. These were all friends of Glen, and some of them were his teammates. And I was lucky enough to work with them. So when Glen passed, I still coached the SEAL Fit Kokoro camps.
Mm-hmm.
These were these Navy SEAL simulated Hell Week camps. And I loved it. I was one of the only civilian coaches that they had on the program. So, it was a little weird because you're kind of like acting like a Navy SEAL while you're hammering, these people coming through the camps, but you're working next to some great humans, and we all had a role to play in it. And it was a great transformative experience. So you come in on a Friday, you leave on a Sunday. The person you come in on as a Friday is very different than the one that leaves on a Sunday. So it's about that personal challenge. What are you made of? But also, what's the group made of? And there's a lot of unlocking of a group dynamic in those Kokoro camps. And it's magical to be on the coaching side of that. To see people go from Friday to Sunday it's in 52 hours, you see this completely different human come out the back end. TJ went through the camp in 2014, and I was one of the coaches there. So TJ's a digital e-commerce mastermind. So he is the guy building Yahoo HTML websites back in the late 90s when he was in high school. He was early on the Amazon platform, building websites like Facebook pixels, all that jazz. He does all of it. And so he was working for a client in Encinitas. The client and I were buddies. And the client sounded like, "Hey, you still coach that SEAL Fit stuff?" And I'm like, yeah, we have a camp coming up. He's like, "Be on the lookout for this guy named Ferreira." And his name's TJ Ferreira. Make sure he's got a good time. And now I don't think this guy knew what that meant, but what that meant was go kick the living crap out of this guy and get him to quit. Or see if you can get him to quit. So I see TJ in this camp. I identify him right away. And I'm sorry about the swearing rules on this podcast.
None whatsoever.
He has a very specific look about him. And when TJ's kind of got a very neutral face, it looks like he's telling you to fuck off with his eyes. And so I walk up to him, and he's immediately just looking at me like he's telling me to fuck off. He's not saying a word. He knows better. But I just look at him, I'm like, "Don't you fuck me, Ferreira." And I just get in his face and start laying into him because my friend told me to. I don't know who this guy is. I've never met him before. So I'm beating on him and just, getting in his face. And he ends up losing what's referred to as your weapon. So you're holding a weighted PVC stick, and you're never meant to lose it. It's one of the skill drills. So he lost it. And because in the confusion, he put it down or he dropped it. And I'm like, "I got you." And I hammer him. I'm like making him do push-ups and crawl around on his face. I make him crawl into a pile of mud, like smeared all over his face. And I'm just like, lick that mud. Things you probably can't do now, but I did then. And to his credit, he did it all. He always looked at me like he was going to kill me. Never said a word, and just did it.
Wow.
And it was so cool to see because he made it through that entire camp, all the crap that we gave him that entire weekend, and he came out the back end a better person. And I wasn't friends with him, so I didn't know him. I went about my merry way, and I saw him at the gym maybe, I don't know, a year and a half later. He was still in Encinitas. I hadn't seen him at all. And he walks up to me and he's like, hey man, what's going to be like that? And I'm like, oh shoot, like you go to this gym too? We struck up a little friendship conversation and stayed in touch. Next thing you know, we lift every once in a while. And he's this other person. He's gone through the camp and he's so cool. And then, fast forward a year, and that's when the BUBS idea sparked. It was the two of us sitting down in early 2017, and he had recovered from me making him lick some dirt, and we were friends. He comes over to the house and he sees a jar of collagen on my countertop, and he looks at me and he's like, you take that stuff? And I just start raving, Joshua, about how I felt. Now understand, at the time, I'm 45 years old. I have a 1-year-old toddler, and my wife's pregnant with our second. And I start taking collagen because she told me to. She was like, you're not getting any younger. I need to preserve you. And this is going to help with that. Like collagen, like what's even in this stuff? Like, you want me to take this? She's like, just put it in your coffee. That's how you do it. Some blogger told me about it, and just trust me. So I take the collagen, and about 3 weeks into taking it, I took it every day. I figured if I was going to do it, I would give it a true test. And about 3 weeks into it, my fingernails are growing like crazy. About a month into it, I needed a haircut, and I'd just gotten a haircut. and about 2 months into it, my knees stopped hurting. Now, keep in mind, I'm 45. I used to snowboard for a living when I was 19, all the way through. So all the years of CrossFit, SealFit, running, swimming, surfing, biking, you name it. I had a lot of impact, a lot of miles on this body. Collagen was and is an absolute game changer for joint health, muscle recovery, what it's done for my gut health. It's unbelievable. It is that glue that we talked about earlier. So TJ looks at me, sees the jar of collagen on the counter, and I'm like, dude, it has changed my life. It is unbelievable. Like, I don't believe in much of anything. I'm a skeptic on all supplementation. This works. And he just looks at me and goes, well, hey, man, let's start a company. I'm like, of course you'd say that. Like, you're the digital mastermind. Right. And he's like, no, like, let's start a company. And we looked at each other and said, well, what would it look like? And we both looked at each other, and clear as day, defining moment, we both said at the exact same time, well, whatever we do, we have to do something cool for charity. And I just started laughing. I'm like, well, shit, I know the charity. It's got to be Glen's charity. Mm-hmm. And this is exactly the kind of product that Glen would have taken because it stands for self-improvement, just like Glen did. And Glen was always helping others. So we'll start a company with only products that stand for self-improvement, and we'll donate 10% of all profits to charitable cause in Glen's name, Glen's foundation, the Glen Doherty Memorial Foundation. And Glen's call sign in the Navy was Bub.
Bingo.
So we named the company BUBS Naturals.
That's amazing.
And it just rolled, man. Like it just felt good.
Dude, that gives me chills because those moments are exactly the type of moments that change history, that shape our history. And it's really powerful. So I guess you guys started with collagen, I would assume.
Yeah. So the next step was figuring this stuff out because I didn't know anything about collagen. I mean, I bought it off of Amazon. Right. I didn't know like what to do with it. Then it was the idea of like, well, what does a brand stand for? Now, I'm in the action sports space, right? Like, I care about what I wear. I care about what a brand stands for. I want it to look good, feel good, like all the things. And the brand had to do that. It was my best friend's name. Well, the quality in the jar had to be the best. So that was really the challenge, was I had to go out and figure out who makes collagen, who are the players, who makes it the best, who makes it the most ethically, who makes it in the best supply chain, who has the best quality, the best amino acids. Like, I had to learn all that from the ground up. Then I had to have it better. Like, how do you level that up? I want the best amino acid profile, which delivers the best results. I want the best flavor profile so that you can't taste it. In other words, unflavored. I want the best solubility. I want it to disperse and dissolve and work really seamlessly. And that was the goal, man. Set out to create the best collagen on the planet and let the world know how we're different. So how are we different? 10% of all profits goes to charity. No one in the dietary supplement world does that. Wow. It's just an inherently uncharitable space that we dove into. Okay, well, that's not enough. It's got to be the best. So then we took the collagen and we said, well, let's make it NSF certified for sport. And that was scary because NSF doesn't care who you are. If you don't have the cleanest ingredients going, you're not going to pass. Well, we passed. And because we had worked so hard to create the best collagen, it passed. Awesome. So now we're 100% NSF certified for sport. Then we chased down the Whole30 approved diet, which is really big for cleanliness, clean eating protocols. And after about a year and a half of banging on their door, they finally answered and they tested our product out. And they're like, okay, you're good. We'll take it. So here we are, the only brand that bears both marks proudly on their packaging. We launched into Mct Oil Powder because, the whole idea of peaking human performance is done really efficiently when you've got a fantastic coconut oil as a source for healthy fats. Right. Mental focus, energy, gut health, that's all woven in there. So we have an Mct Oil Powder that's our non-dairy creamer. And those two really go together well. Like, we kind of package them, together. We wrap it around coffee, but smoothies, stuff like that. And then we lit it up with apple cider vinegar. So apple cider vinegar in a gummy is delicious, whereas apple cider vinegar as a drink is disgusting. So it was all those things. We wanted to just make a difference in that supplement space and then try and do it around a really fun story where by being a part of the brand, you're helping others along the way, not just yourself.
It's incredible. Yeah. If you're watching this on the video, you see I've pulled up the website, which is BUBSNaturals.com. So BUBSNaturals.com. And I'm in the shop and I just showed, now I'm showing the collagen that Shaun was talking about for the first part of all of this. And then the Mct Oil Powder, which is here. And luckily you guys sent me a lot of this stuff, so I got a chance to try it and I loved it. Particularly I loved how the collagen, as you mentioned, disperses well, because I like to put it also in my coffee. And the Mct Oil Powder just makes it easy, because you don't have to worry about like carrying around MCT actual oil. And it just all blends well. I put it all in a blender and I make my coffee. I also have to say, I am hooked on those apple cider vinegar gummies, man.
So, it's funny. We just started a relationship with Mark Bell, who's like a big training yoke dude up in Sacramento. And I'm talking with him and his podcast partner, this guy Enzima, and he's just like, yo, man, I don't know what you put in these things, but they are addictive.
They're really good.
And I'm like, well, nothing that's addictive, but the goal is if you can take nutrition and make it easy to work into your daily routine, you're more likely to use it more often.
Right.
So make it work, so that I'm removing a barrier to entry. Like I don't want you to taste cow powder in our collagen. You're never going to taste it again. You're never going to use it again. But if you drink your coffee and you're like, oh, my coffee tastes good. The MCT oil, like it's creamy. I like it. It's flavorful. Apple cider vinegar. You're getting the benefits, but hey, it's not hard. So you just keep using them and you weave it into that daily routine. So I'm all about it. And I'm stoked to hear that. That's why I insisted on sending you some before coming on the show and talking with you. I'm like, hey, I really want you to try it, because otherwise I'm just some guy spinning hot air about his company.
That's right.
And that's not who we are.
That's right. And that's not who we are on the show either. I tend to do my best to always vet everything that I talk about on the show. And also I must note, and I think this is maybe a shout out to TJ, but you guys did a really good job with the website. And the branding. I must say that, because I'm dealing with that as we speak, and I think a lot of people in this social media, creator space, we're all dealing with branding and creating websites and things like that. So I know you guys have put a lot of work into it. So kudos to you on that, for sure.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. It's just, again, it ties back to me. TJ's world is TJ's world. Like, he understands how these things work, and I just say, you go. But the visuals, the branding, what it represents, what it stands for, the color selection, like that was really important to us. Our designer Ryan, just he took all the words that I had that that are on this board, and he knew how to turn those into visual language, and that's powerful. Yeah. So thank you, I appreciate that.
Of course. Well, I know we're going to be we have to wrap up soon, and I obviously at the end of this, I will give you an opportunity to let people know how to best get some of this stuff other than the website. But I always ask 2 questions when I have guests on the show. And the first question is, what is something that you would consider a pet peeve? Like, what just gets under your skin? And it can be from any domain.
So this just happened to me. And I'll leave this person anonymous, but I had a call right before this call. It was a 30-minute call that went 59 minutes long. So I have a major pet peeve with bullshit. And it's funny because I'm a storyteller. I can gab and go. So I know I can be guilty of this. But I had an agenda for that meeting, and it took all 59 minutes to get the answers that I needed for the questions to evaluate something. And, I was shaking my head, and I left the meeting just like, wow. You just killed all this time that didn't need to be killed through bullshit. So that lack of directness, that bullshit factor, I have a certain amount of bluntness to me, which probably doesn't serve me 100% well, but you always know what you get. And I would say that when I encounter a lot of the bullshit, there's usually because there's something not being brought to the surface, and I prefer the transparency and bluntness. So give me that all day long.
I used to have this guy I worked with in Oklahoma before I came to New York, this Italian guy, very old school. He would always say, Josh, save me the labor pains, just give me the baby. Right? So like I can appreciate those kind of sentiments. It's really funny. Okay. And for the last question, what is something you are most grateful for?
That's a no-brainer. Family and friends. I believe that your friends are your family. I am lucky enough to level up around some phenomenal humans that bring out the best of me. It's my sister, it's my mom, it's my brother, it's my wife, 100%. And I am completely grateful for having that tribe around me. It's TJ, it's my friends, it's Mike Hazel, it's my, it's all these people that I've known, whether it was going back to Winchester or more recent people that they just help you level up, man. I couldn't be more grateful for the people that I have around me.
Beautiful. Well, thank you for that. What is the best way for people to find out more about you, your mission, your company, all the social medias, all that stuff?
Yeah, so we kept it simple. The website is bubsnaturals.com. So BUBSNATURALS.com. All our social media is at BUBS Naturals. So, Instagram is our primary channel, Facebook, Snapchat, Twitter, all the stuff.
TikTok?
We have a handle on there, but I'm 50. You don't see me on there.
All good. Maybe soon.
But it's there. It's
all
there.
Right.
Give me a couple months. Maybe I'll jump on the TikTok.
Yeah, why not?
But no, that's all the spots you find us. We're Amazon Prime, Amazon's Choice. So if you're an Amazon person, we're always there as well. It's you'll find us where you need to find us. If you're an online shopper, Vitamin Shop. We're nationwide with our friends at Vitamin Shop. So that's a new one. That's a big partnership. So.
Congrats. That's amazing. Well, I hope that the listeners and the followers, the viewers will take the time to go check out bubsnaturals.com. As you clearly heard through this amazing journey and the story that Shaun just pointed out, this also gives back to charity, and it just has a good story behind it. And I can stand behind that as well. The products are great. They taste good. They work well. So give it a shot. I'll list as much as I can in the description on this episode. And Shaun, I am very grateful to have you on the show. I appreciate your time. And let's keep in touch, man. I hope that you guys just continue to soar.
100%. Definitely keep in touch. I want to hear how it's going. And the next time I get out to New York, hopefully I can get into the gym and we can get some training done.
Awesome. All right. Thanks, everybody. This is Josh signing out. Peace.
Walk the talk, talking facts. Move like me, but I move a little fast. Make my move, here to last. Fasten these seatbelts, I'm coming past. Take care of me, longevity. Hack my biology, better believe. Walking the talk, soul, mind, and body connected. Better come give us a listen. Better come give us a minute or two. Open the box up, we giving you tools. Giving your engine the fuel that it needs. Breathing into it, it's autoimmune. Make a connection, we're stronger in two. Making us one of a kind of a few. Work on the mind, but show me your moves. If you do what you say, you know what to do. Yeah.
Simply walk the talk.